All right. So the topic tonight is actually the whole reason that I got into personal training, and especially for the older crowd, because it's so very important that we preserve as much of our health and our strength as possible. And the more you can do earlier in life, the better. So, yes, I mostly work with seniors, but this is for everybody. So if you're in your 20s and 30s, pay attention. And you're going to want to, if you aren't doing something now, you're going to want to start doing something just so you can preserve your health and have a better quality of life as you do age. For those of you that are already in your 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and beyond, there's still stuff you can do to be able to increase the quality of your life. So it's never too late. And at the very end, I'm going to give you a couple of examples of people that either they were training clear into their way late years or didn't even start strength training until their later years. So I'll give you some names that you can look up and research and check them out because it's pretty impressive. So tonight, like I said, I'm talking about why strength training is so very important, especially as we age. It helps preserve our health and it helps us live longer. And like I said, it is more important once we hit 40s and older than even in our younger years. It's important in our younger years so that you can at least start that habit and that lifestyle and be able to continue. But the strength training portion of it becomes so much more important when we do hit 40 and beyond. And I'm going to get into all of that tonight. So you've heard me say it before, we do start losing muscle mass once we turn 40. And once we hit 40, then we start losing that muscle mass about 8 times faster every decade. And so, if you're not doing anything, you're losing a lot of muscle mass. And so, along with that comes your loss of mobility, your loss of balance. You lack energy a lot of times. And a lot of what causes this, or not the thing that causes it, but contributes to it, is around 40 is when we really start to see some of those hormone changes, both men and women. And that can cause it to be harder to maintain muscle, to build muscle. And then, of course, without doing anything, then you risk osteoporosis, which is basically fragile bones, kind of like you've got a good solid bone, and then osteoporosis, it looks like Swiss cheese, kind of. Not quite that bad, but your bone density is very, very fragile. So strength training actually can help build that bone density. And of course, that requires consistency. You can't just lift weights, for a month or whatever and say, okay, I'm good. And my bones are back to normal. And I don't risk osteoporosis anymore. No, it's lifting on a consistent basis. And when I'm saying strength training and weightlifting, resistance training, I'm not meaning you have to get into the gym and lift super, super heavy. You look at that 100-pound dumbbell and think, there's no way I can do that. Don't worry about it. You don't have to. It is putting the pressure on your muscles to really work them. I mean, you don't want to do something too light, but you don't want to do something way too heavy either, because then you do risk injury. And that's another reason why it's super important to be able to get some professional help as well. invest in yourself and hire a personal trainer. They have your best interest in mind, and they're going to develop a program specifically to you and what your needs are, depending on, if you've had surgeries, if you have arthritis, if you have diabetes. I mean, all of that comes into play, and they can build a program designed, customized to you. So invest in yourself, and it's worth, hiring a personal trainer. What this does, and I'm going to get a little geeky on you, because just kind of, I like to back everything with science. And so with doing some research and whatnot, Harvard did a study on strength training and what that does to what they call our longevity genes. And people in their 60s started strength training, and they hadn't done anything before. And so those that started in their 60s increased the enzymes that boost those longevity genes. So even if you haven't ever done anything and you start and be consistent about it, then that can still benefit you. So you need to do that. Those changes happen on a cellular or a genetic level. And that's what this study was proving, that it's not just circumstances that these people were in there, and it's not coincidence that, oh, they were lifting weights and so the strength got stronger. They were testing the enzymes and these genes. So there's a little bit of science for you. So loss of muscle mass and strength kind of go hand in hand with any kind of physical disability, poor quality of life, and even death. I know that seems, I don't want to sound negative or dark or anything, but it's a reality. And how many times have you heard of someone who has fallen and broken a hip, and then they can't do anything about that? And I've heard of so many people that shortly after doing that, especially the older they are, a lot of times that leads to other complications, which then leads to death. We don't want that for any of you. So it's super important to be able to get that strength ahead of time, because that strength, and like I'm kind of reiterating myself on things that I've talked about in the past, but when you build that strength, and especially in your lower body and your core, then that helps with your balance and your mobility. So there's, some benefits there of strength training is you can build that strength to be able to help with your balance and mobility. Our metabolic rate is also reduced as we lose muscle, because the more muscle mass you have, the higher your metabolic rate, or metabolism. You hear metabolism more than metabolic rate. And, people will say, oh, they have such a high metabolism, or my metabolism is so extremely low. Well, you can help control that. And I did a video, I don't know if it was last week or a couple of weeks ago, on how you can increase your metabolism. So be sure and check that video out as well. I'm not going to get into that now. But basically what happens then is we lose our muscle mass, and so our metabolism decreases. And then if we're still eating the same amount, or we're eating more because maybe we get depressed that we're not able to move as much or whatever, so we gain weight. Well, that causes us to be sluggish and tired, and that affects our insulin levels. And when that happens, we're less likely to exercise, which then of course lowers the metabolism even more. And it's that vicious cycle then. So we need to break that. another statistic that I found very interesting and kind of sad actually is less than 20% of people over 40 do any kind of strength training. And it's no wonder that we see so much, especially like diabetes, type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular disease, um, all of these different things, because people aren't exercising and taking care of their body. And simply doing some strength training from time to time, um, well, and not time to time, I'm talking consistency. But I'm not saying you have to do it every single day. Um, but even 2 to 3 times a week will help with that. And again, just some more statistics on different studies that were done. And there were a couple of different studies, one of them again being Harvard, is that if you start strength training in your 40s or even later, that you can get very close to having the same results later in life as if you trained your whole life. And so they were saying, like, once you're 90, so if you start in your 40s and you keep doing strength training, resistance training, for your life 2 to 3 times a week or whatever, when you're 90, your strength is going to be just like if you were 50 but not training. And that's 40 years difference. And so, that made a big impact on me when I read that if we can continue to do some strength training, then we're going to be better off than if we don't do anything at all. So even a little bit, and I've said that, I don't know how many times before. So some things that strength training can help, it helps. And there again, these are backed by studies and science. And if you want those, I can give those to you. But it can help reduce cancer, cardiovascular disease, hypertension, depression, anxiety, like I said, diabetes type 2. It can help with your cognitive function, and it has been proven to reduce the risk of dementia and Alzheimer's. Because, okay, here we go, geeking out again. In your brain, there's a thing called a hippocampus. And if you go back to your high school years, I'm sure you learned about it. But basically, that's our memory, is the hippocampus. And so strength training helps that. And so it helps reduce the dementia and Alzheimer's. So just to kind of wrap things up and kind of tie everything up in a nice little bow, just to kind of go over everything in a nutshell. The reasons to do any kind of strength training are to help prevent or help improve osteoporosis. You build your muscle mass and therefore your strength. And when you do that, then that also helps your metabolism, which then helps burn more calories. It helps with balance and mobility, and then, of course, your stability. It helps with memory, like I said. In men, it helps increase the testosterone. And as men age and their testosterone goes down, then they can get a lot of problems with that as well. So men, if you want your testosterone to increase or at least not reduce, do some strength training. And like I said before, hiring a personal trainer can be very key because they can personalize a workout program specifically to you and your needs, and it'll help you avoid injury as well. Because if you just start in trying to lift something but you're not doing it correctly, you risk injury, especially in the back and the knees and the hips. And those are big areas that we don't want to hurt. So I said at the very beginning, I was going to give you some names to look up and just kind of read about them because they're pretty inspiring. And I'm sure many of us, especially in this age group, have heard of Jack LaLanne. And he was huge in fitness and training, and he trained clear up until he was 96 years old. That's pretty incredible. I want to be able to do that. So that's why I'm in the gym almost every single day. Um, Another one that has been kind of an inspiration to me from years back, her name is Ernestine Shepherd, and she's the oldest female bodybuilder at 83, and she looks phenomenal. I want to be like her when I grow up. um, so Ernestine Shepherd is another one. And then Joan McDonald. She didn't actually even start lifting until she was 70 years old. And a couple of different places, I saw her before and then her after. And it's incredible. She lost 62 pounds just by starting to lift weights. And of course, she was eating properly and all that kind of stuff too. But there are so many benefits to strength training, especially as we age. So if you haven't started yet, get started. If you need some help with that, then contact me. I would be happy to help you personalize a workout program specific to you and your needs. And I'll put all those links underneath this video so you can contact me and just invest in yourself and take care of yourself and live a really long, healthy life. Because I do believe that movement and exercise help increase the quality of life. Go get them.